So she ends up getting whole brain radiation. She starts to slow down, and in 2 weeks she has to recover. Still not dealing with the lungs.
Right. Now, obviously, things change relationally for you then, right? Because you go from her being able to do stuff, or you both do stuff, to you just fully having to take care of her, go to work every day.
Yeah. So
come back. How did you do that?
You know, my job was extremely supportive throughout the 2-year journey. I mean, work wasn't the priority.
Right.
Melissa was the priority. My daughter Giana's been the priority. I was the priority. Like, it was all about health and wellness at that point, and making sure that she felt supported. I mean, if my job didn't give me that freedom and that flexibility to do that, things would have turned out very, very differently. So it's a blessing to have had the support, the financial support, the moral support, the emotional support from the job alone.
Right.
And they were just like, "Matt, just go, do, we got you. You know, don't worry about the work." So I would work, you know, when I felt I could. But when I knew I couldn't, it was like, no, I can't.
Right.
So, yeah.
I lived that. I had my laptop in the hospital, and I would dial in for certain meetings, and then others I couldn't do, whatever the case may be. All right. So now you go and you come back, and, you know, there's the 20 in the brain, and there's all this radiation and everything and so she starts to, you know, slow down, and you start to pick up even more, because you have to. So you're now managing the doctors, managing home, you know, trying to make sense of this to Giana. How did that play out? Like, how were you able to, you know, that was for me a big struggle, trying to tell my kids and have it make sense to them. And that really hurt me, because I didn't know how to do it.
You know, so many layers came up, because remember, I said that we flew down the end of February.
Right. I was going to ask you, where was Giana?
She actually, so just to backtrack with that, Giana had school break in the beginning of February, January, for winter recess. And so I came back to New York, and I grabbed her and I took her to Arizona with me. Wow. So she landed in Arizona on February 14th for Valentine's Day. So it was a big surprise to her mom.
All right.
And it was great. So we all three flew back.
Okay.
At the end of February. So she was with us for about 10 days.
Oh, wow.
So, but when the lesions came back 20 and she starts slowing down, I have to manage Giana. I have to manage my wife, Melissa, and I have to manage myself. And don't forget, COVID now shows up.
Right. Right.
Nobody expected that.
Right.
So now the relationships that I have with the doctors and the way we would normally just go to the hospital and do our appointments, that whole thing shifted. Now it's like, hey, Matt, you can't go with your wife. Hey, Matt, Melissa's got to come in by herself. You can drop her off, but she has to kind of be in this by herself.
Oh.
So here I am waiting in the car for her to get her treatments done. And then somebody is helping her, an assistant's helping her get back into the car. Everything's masked. Everything is safe. Everything's gloves and shields and all this stuff. And now we're living in a different time.
Wow.
Yeah. So I take her home. And at times after treatment, she was like, honey, I just don't want to go. I want to go for a walk. And I'm like, let's go to a park. And we would walk a park. And we would just keep our mask on and just walk. And she wouldn't walk long. She just like, I just want to
be
move.
Out. Yeah.
I don't want to be back in the home again, sitting on the sofa, sitting on my bed or laying in my bed. I need to be out. I'm like, whatever you need, I got you.
Right.
So I would take her and bring her home, and take her from the park and bring her home, and just do everything that needed to be done. So I would make her dinner or order her food or everything. Absolutely everything at that point.
Wow.
And then the next day we would get up and go get treatment again and blah, blah, blah. And then again, this hasn't been addressed yet, the lung. So this is growing. And now she's like, I can't breathe. And now I'm calling the doctor like, she can't breathe.
And we're in COVID.
Right.
So you're probably afraid that, God forbid, one day she has to go to the emergency room. You can't go in with her.
I had to. I mean, thank God where I live is close to the hospital. So it's literally, I could just jump in my car and be there in 10 minutes. So it's quick.
Right.
But the idea of having to do that under COVID season was grueling.
Yeah, just mentally, emotionally,
everything grueling.
And then you have to worry about not getting sick because you don't want to get her sick.
So check this out. So everyone knows that my wife is sick. Everyone knows that she's kind of on the decline. Now everybody wants to see her.
Oh, Jesus.
Now people want to come over and people want to like, I want to see Melissa. I said, I don't care what you want.
You're right.
It ain't about what you want.
And
in fact, it wasn't even about what Melissa wanted. Because Melissa really wanted to be around family.
Right.
She really wanted to be around love and support and care and things like that. And I had to tell her, sorry.
Yeah.
And this COVID thing, we don't know what this is. We don't know how to handle it.
And she was having breathing problems already.
She was, in the vulnerable, she was one of the most vulnerable
people.
Between the people that are the elderly and the sick. Wow. She fit that mold perfectly.
Wow.
So I had to make sure I was good. I can't get sick. Then how am I going to be a caregiver if I'm sick to my wife or my daughter? Right. If my daughter gets sick, then what?
Wow. So now you're the cop too.
I'm the bad cop.
You're the bad cop on top of that.
I mean, the family members, threw some shade.
Right.
Not understanding or maybe feeling like, Melissa should still be around her family. And I'm like, on any other day, I get that.
Right.
But you're not seeing what I'm seeing.
Right.
And you're not hearing what I'm hearing from the doctors. And I think there was a lot of emotions that kind of came up because people wanted to be there for Melissa. And I get it. I understand it. So we ended up doing like Zoom sessions with the family and people would, and she wouldn't even last long. She'll be like, I love you. All right, I'm done. Wow. She'll be over like in 10, 20 minutes, and then it just got worse. But then we made a compromise. I spoke to her doctor. Even her doctor was like, nobody should be coming over her to the home to see her. And then Melissa said, look, if I'm going to die, I need to see certain people.
Right.
And I don't care about this COVID thing.
Right.
We're going to do whatever we got to do to keep things safe. We're going to do what we got to do to make sure that people are abiding by certain rules. And that's what we did. She gave me 5 people. I said, pick 5. She gave me a list of 5 people that some were family and some were friends. So not all the family came. But she just picked who she wanted. And I told them, I said, look, okay, so-and-so, on this day, you can come. Please come as I request. With masks, with sanitizer, with everything, shoes off, spraying down the house, everything.
Wow.
And we social distance. So they would come through the front door. They would stay in a seat that I assigned.
Okay.
And I had masks. I had gloves. I had everything on the table in case they needed anything. It was right there. They didn't have to go in there. And then Melissa's, was like, 7, 8 feet away. And they just, everyone had their mask on. And they were talking. And I said, no touching, no hugging, none of that. Just keep your distance, say what you have to say, share your love. And you got about 30 minutes.
Wow.
That's it. And that's how we did things. And people respected it. And there was a lot of emotions in that because I would see people come out of my home and crying, like knowing that that was going to be the last time they were going to see her. Because this thing was just growing. Her brain grew 20 lesions and more, right? So there was no stopping that. That was a runaway train. And then her lungs just started developing more. So then after that, we found out that the tumor started spreading down to her liver. So now it was like the doctors telling us like, hey, between COVID and coming back and forth, between the lesions in her brain and this thing kind of growing all over the place, you have to consider hospice at this point.
Right.
And now we're like, okay, so this is it.
Wow. Yeah, that moment when you kind of realize this could be it.
Yeah. Knowing that this is it. Like, we've done everything.
Right.
And we had a lot of hope. And she looked good at one point. She was like rocking, like, wow, she's going to make it. And then you realize that we're actually at the finish line.
That's just before. Yeah.
Yeah. It was such a crazy, crazy experience. And then I'm looking at my daughter like, mom's going to stay home. What do you mean? She's not going to go to get treatment anymore.
Right.
So she's just going to be home? Yeah. What does that mean? She's going to die here? Like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That conversation must have been gut-wrenching.
You know, my daughter didn't know how to digest that. She was afraid.
That was hard to see her. Like, literally the day that I stopped going to school, she was fine. But she told me, she's just like, the tumors in my brain increased by a lot. There was like over 20 of them. And now I have lesions in my lungs and in my liver. It's just like everything just kept going down and down. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And at this point, I'm like, it's over. There's nothing we can do. COVID is happening. There's so many other people that need to be taken care of. I'm like, where are they going to find time to just take care of her? Like, what can they do for her? And the chemo or the radiation was just making her decline even more. So I'm like, there's nothing they can do. So I just have to sit there and watch my mother die. So I would just cry and sob about it.
She was very afraid. And to know that her mom one day was going to pass in the house, it was like, but I live here. You know what I mean? Shouldn't she be under some care? I'm like, because of COVID and all that, the care is going to be here with me. And I worked with a hospice team that would come and make calls. So we did everything remotely.
What?
With hospice. So they gave me all the medication I needed. They told me what to do, told me what to look out for. They gave me equipment. I had a bed brought into the home.
Right.
So I took my bedroom and I moved we have a queen size bed. We moved it all the way to one side of the room and then we made room for her other bed. And I did everything. I mean, I fed her in the morning, gave her all of her medication that she had to take. She was on so many things. I had to sort out her pills, make sure she was taking her pills, and give her everything.
Wow.
So between pain management and feeding her, you know, taking her to the restroom. And it was interesting because there were times where, you know, when she first went into hospice, she could walk to the restroom herself. And she was just like, oh, I got to go to the restroom. And she'll go. And then like a couple of days later, she needed a walker. And then she would walk with a walker to the restroom. And then it was like, she can't walk from the living room to the restroom. Now I have to keep her in the bedroom because the bedroom's closer to the restroom. So now it's like, now I got to keep her in the bedroom.
Right.
And now she's confined to the bedroom. And now she couldn't even walk to the living room because that was too much work for her. So now she's like COVID, cancer, isolation, everything is
all balled up into
one. Like this is where I'm going to die. Like I'm in this room, this is where it ends. So I had to do everything to make her comfortable. And then I remember one day, Melissa says, she looks at me and she goes, babe, there's got to be something we can do. And I I hear you. And I knew there was nothing we could do.
Right.
But in her mind, her fighter spirit, her lead, she's a Leo, her lioness would come out. She was like, there's got to be something we can do. And, you know, family and friends, some friends would call and say, look, I heard there's a clinical trial that does this and does that. And then Melissa would go, yeah, let's try that. And I'm like, okay. I said, I'll tell you what, let's call your doctor. And then I knew what the doctor was going to say.
Right.
I said, let's call your doctor and let's just find out. So the doctor gets on a Zoom call with us. And then Melissa's like, so, hey, doc, is there anything I can do at this point? And the doctor goes, sweetheart, if I put you on a clinical trial right now, the drugs that they use on clinical trials are so harsh. They're very experimental. You won't last a minute under that stuff. And all the chemo that I was giving you, they were low dose chemos and you couldn't even handle that. How do we put you on a clinical trial when they are experimenting and they're going to hit you with things you can't even handle? So Melissa's like, so you're telling me there's nothing I can do? And the doctor's like, yeah, sorry. You know, like she didn't know, doctor didn't even know what to say. She was like, yeah. And then Melissa's like, okay, so I'm going to die. This is it. And I'm there like, I'm there. Holding her, hugging her, loving on her, just like, I'm here. I'm here. That's it. That's all I got.
Right.
That's what happened.
Wow. And somehow you're having to stay sane in all this.
By the grace of God.
Yeah.
By the grace of God.
Because we had a conversation, right?
I don't know how I did it.
Right.
I mean, this was supernatural. This was not.
That's what I say.
This is supernatural. This is not anything I could have done in my mind.
Or in your own strength.
On my own strength. No. And, God is a blessing because my mother, she's been a caregiver many years with many people in her life. She's the oldest of three. And the two other siblings, the younger brother passed away in the 80s. And then her sister passed away in the 90s, in the late 90s from breast cancer. So my mom had to take care of them. So I saw my mom take care of them. And then now my mother's taking care of her mother, who's 93 years old.
Wow.
So she's been a caregiver all the way. And my mother does it so effortlessly. Like I got it. I'll do it. Yep. I got it. Don't worry about it. And I found myself kind of doing that. Nobody was going to take care of Melissa the way I did. Not her mom, because her mom was in Puerto Rico at the time and still is in Puerto Rico. And her dad just doesn't have the capacity to, to handle that. So there was nobody going to take care of her the way I would. So I just knew what she needed. I knew what she expected. I knew what she deserved. And I gave her everything, every step of the way. I held her tight all the way. And she knew that. At the end of the day, we sat on the sofa one day after getting the news about her, not going to be able to make it. I put on TV for her, and the TV would stimulate her brain too much. And she would get kind of like, honey, turn it off, please, because whatever. But this one day we were just sitting down, listening to music, and, we were holding hands. And she goes, I just want to tell you that I love you. I just want to tell you that. I appreciate you, and I know that everything that we've been through and everything that we've gone through, you were there always. And I was like, a part of me wanted to stop her and say, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Make her easy. But then another part was like, Matt, just receive what she's telling you. Don't interrupt. Just receive her words and let that land for you. And I was like, okay, I receive it. She needed to do that.
Right.
We were in a very rocky place in our marriage when all this happened. Like, this wasn't like Lover's Paradise. This was like Lover's Rock.
We all know those points.
Right. So this was a very, if cancer didn't show up, we probably would have been on our way out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a tough time. And then cancer shows up and it's like, I could literally walk away from this. And then another part was like, no, Matt, you gotta dive in hard. And I did. I gave her everything I could.
Wow.
Yep. And then after that conversation, about a week later, in April 29th, I remember that day so vividly. I was taking care of her, and I just realized she was just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And we had her on drugs to kind of ease the pain, and she was really drugged up. So I thought she was drugged up.
Mm-hmm.
And she was sleeping longer than usual. And I can see her chest rising and falling, and, she wasn't really getting up to go to the restroom or talking or anything like that. She was just kind of in one position, and, she had life in her. But I was a little concerned, and I called the hospice folks, and I said, she's kind of been laying there a while. Is there anything I need to be concerned with? They said, Matt, is she breathing? I said, yeah, she's breathing. Mm-hmm. Her chest is moving. She goes, I said, but she hasn't got up. It's like 11 o'clock in the morning, and she's normally up like at 8. And here we are at 11, and it's like, this is weird.